everyone and welcome to another video from Colour with Claire. So last night I posted a work in progress picture of a page I'm working on from Worlds Within Worlds by Kirby Rosannes, and it's this picture here. It's the Converse sneaker shoe, and a lot of the comments were asking how I achieved this dappled sort of tree leaf looking texture. And it's something that I've done before actually. I did it in the Colouring Heaven World of Princesses special, I think it was. And I used exactly the same technique then, and it was quite well received then actually, so I probably should have done this before now, but hey ho. So what I thought I'd do, because really handily we've got pretty much the exact same illustration on the other side, even though it's not identical, what I thought I'd do is I'd recreate this over here on this tree so that you can see it being done from start to finish in real time. Now, as with absolutely everything on my channel, it's very, very simple to do. All you're going to need is some paint pens. You could even just use paint and a dotting tool if that's what you've got, you know, if that's what you can get your hands on. But I find it easier to use paint pens. Now, there's loads of different brands of paint pens. There's some really cheap ones that you can get on Amazon that's non-branded. The ones I use are the Uni-Posca pens, these ones here. And you can get them fairly cheaply. They're not very, very cheap, but you can buy them individually and you can buy them in sets as well. And I've just used 3 different greens for this technique here. You could probably get away with just those 2 actually, but I quite like to add in this kind of minty green at the end as well. And then I'll also be showing you how I'm planning on doing a few little flowers within the tree, a few little blossoms, and I'll be using a couple of other colours for that. So yes, you'll need at least 2 greens because you want to have that differentiation in tone and colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that we can see this tree really close up. Make sure that my book isn't going to go flying because it's in that weird position. So about there. Okay, so first things first, you're going to need your darkest colour. Now, this is quite a helpful illustration because Kirby always includes a lot of shaded areas and it kind of tells you where to put your darker colours, so that's great. But you can use this technique on, you know, the most basic of an outline of a tree. All you have to do is just dapple on the colour, you know, just put it wherever you want. It's going to be really effective no matter where you put it. But it is handy on these kinds of illustrations because, I don't know, you've got the space there already for you to put your darker colours, so you just know the outline of where things are going to go. But you can do it on absolutely any foliage, whether it's bushes, trees, you know, anything like that. So you get your darkest green first of all, and this one I'm using is just called green. And what we're going to do, and what I did on the previous page, is to find all of the very heavily shaded areas and then just dot on the paint. So simply just like this. So hopefully you can see in all of the darkest areas I'm just dotting on the dark green. Okay, so put that absolutely everywhere that you see the shading. So, you know, you can apply this, as I've said, to any other colouring book that has foliage. It doesn't have to be a Kirby one. But if it does have, you know, areas where the artist has shaded it, more the better, because it enables you to then, you know, just be able to place your dark colours wherever they've put their shade. But if not, just literally do it all over the place. I don't think that one that I did in Colouring Heaven had any shading, or it might have, I can't really remember, but all I did was just dapple it on anyway, so it doesn't matter, you know, whether you've got shading or not, just dapple it on. So that's all I'm going to do. Very, very simple, just go over all the shaded area. You can do it quite quickly as well. It's a very quick way of filling in a lot of foliage, which can be quite daunting. I think that's why I did it originally on that Colouring Heaven illustration, because it's just this huge tree, and I was thinking, how do I colour this, you know, this whole thing? And I don't really want it to just be a soft blend or a soft gradient. I want it to have some texture to it, like a tree would. So I just thought about doing this, and because it's so quick and you don't really have to think about it, that's why I like it really. But it does turn out really, really effective. So any areas of shade, or just anywhere you want. If this was a totally open outline of a tree, I'd just be dotting it here, there and everywhere. So the thing that I like about this is that it sort of shows you the effect of different individual leaves. Even though you're not having to do a lot of work to fill in every single individual leaf on the tree, it still gives that effect to the eye. So as usual with my tutorials, it's simple but it's effective. So I'm going to keep this in real time, as I say. Might take a little bit, you know, a little bit long to do, but at least you can see every single stroke I'm putting down and everything will be clear to you. I think oftentimes, and I've been guilty of this before, is a lot of tutorials are sometimes sped up or steps are missed, and even though it might seem like it's a very simple step that sort of doesn't need saying, so to speak, or, you know, I think to see it all in real time, it just really helps get the gist of it. It does for me anyway. When I'm watching tutorials, I want to see every single second, because if something skips, it's often difficult to sort of see where that person has gone and what they've, you know, what they've done in that time that it's been sped up. So, you know, as I said, I'm guilty of it as well. I do it sometimes, but I try not to leave any pertinent information out anyway. But this is just as simple as dotting, you know, you can't get any simpler than this. So whatever book or illustration you're using, you can apply this technique. I just think it's great how Kirby keeps those shaded areas in, because it just makes it so much easier to identify your shadows. Now with your Posca pens, they are a push and pump pen, so if you do push the nib up, it will release ink or paint. So you want to be careful when you're dotting that you're not dotting too hard, that you're not dotting so hard that it pushes the nib up, because you might end up with a huge mess of paint. So just keep it light. I'll do some here as well. So when you think you've got all of your areas of shade done, and you can go back, you can always go back again after. Don't worry if you miss any pieces, or if you go over a shaded area with this kind of green, don't worry, because it's completely opaque and it can overlap itself, if that makes sense, and it will show up. So the next one that I'm using is called Apple Green, and I'm going to fill in pretty much everything else with this. So again, exactly the same dotting technique. Now you don't have to fill in every single inch or millimetre of white, because you can come back in and do some more, or you can leave it as it is, or you can come in with that very light mint green that I'm going to do at the end and fill in a few more of the gaps. But if you look at my original tree on the other side, you'll notice there's still loads of white gaps. But again, I think it adds to it. I think if it was completely block coloured, so to speak, it wouldn't look as good. So yeah, just filling it in. And I know there are little flowers embedded within this tree, but that's fine. I'm going straight over them because I'm going to put my own flowers in a bit. The worst thing is when you've got a lot of detail and a lot of foliage, and you just look at it and it's so daunting because it seems like there's so much to do and so many little tiny pieces to colour around, and I can't be doing with that, which is why I end up coming up with things like this that make my life easier, and hopefully yours. Now when you come to the edge of the tree, like the little, you know, the outlines, you can go over it. Gives it a nice look of the leaves actually being over the edge of the tree rather than being contained in a line. So it gives a bit more of an organic look. But these pens are great, like I say, because they are opaque. So even if you go over an area with a really dark colour, you could go over an area with black, you can just go and put white straight over it and it'd show up, you know, so you don't have to worry about making a mistake or hitting the wrong place or something, because you can just go in and redo it, or just overlap it over the top and it'll totally work. So you can see the general idea of it so far. It's literally just dotting, but I think having those areas of shade in there just gives it that little bit of shape and form, so it doesn't just look like a flat area of green. Now, as you can see on this illustration, there are some leaves falling down from the tree, and again, I'd just colour them like that. But I'm not going to do that all over at the moment because I've still got to do the sky. I'm not entirely sure whether I'm going to finish this page with the other one. I might leave it for a bit and come back to it later on down the line, but at least we've got the tree done if I do want to come back to it. So we've got quite a large area here. Again, just dotting all over. Don't worry about your white gaps. Hopefully you can see already that it's starting to take on some shape and some, you know, the look of individual leaves, and more texture definitely than it had before, and that it would have if you just did a green gradient or something. I'm always interested to know how people colour their leaves and bushes and grass as well, because it can become just such a flat expanse of space, you know, if you just colour over it without any texture. And I'm really bad at colouring grass. It just ends up me just doing flicking everywhere and it just doesn't look right. But I think for leaves, this technique definitely works. And as I say, it takes literally no skill whatsoever. I think that is a big draw as well why people watch my channel, because I haven't got the patience to do anything that's going to take, you know, a year to learn, or it's going to take, you know, an hour to do one tiny little square inch of colouring. It's just not in me. So everything I do is always to see what's the best and most efficient way of doing something, but still keeping it looking, you know, quite impressive at the end. But yeah, basically I just like it because it's quick and I'm too impatient to mess about. So it probably says something, it definitely says something about me. But hopefully this is going to help you in your colouring. If things like foliage and leaves and trees have kind of daunted you in the past and you just want to get it coloured nicely but not have to spend ages on it, then this is the technique for you. Another reason why I speed up my tutorials sometimes is that I've literally got no idea what to say after I've explained the basic principle and it ends up with me waffling. But I have heard comments recently from a few of you that say you quite like my waffling, so so I think we'll be okay. But yeah, I just want to do this real time because it really doesn't take that long at all. I'm going to do some right on the edge of this here. And we've almost done with this colour. There we go. So when you're happy, you can come in with your third green if you want to. Again, you could just leave it like this. You don't need a third colour. But I don't know, I think it just helps to fill in the gaps and it gives it yet another layer of you know, some interest to the eye with a different colour. Now, you probably won't be able to see this colour very well because initially it does look very much like the apple green that we've just put down, and this one's actually called light green. But it has a slightly, how would I describe this green? It is kind of minty, but I think it's got some blue in it as well, you know, because it just doesn't seem like a true green. But again, all I'm doing is just filling in a few of those white places that we've left, but not all of them, because, you know, you'd be there all day, and like I said, I think it looks all right with the white bits left in as well. But that's all I'm doing with this one, is just going over any areas that I think are looking just a little bit too open, a little bit too white, and just dotting over. Hopefully you can tell with the areas of shading that we've put in that it separates some of the branches of the tree and some of the clusters of leaves that you've got, rather than it just being an expanse of green. Don't worry if your illustration that you're colouring on doesn't have any shading. Like I say, even if you just use this technique just by dotting the whole thing over with different greens, it will still be dead effective. So if you looked at that picture that I did from the Colouring Heaven magazine, you will have seen that I put some little flowers embedded into the tree. Because again, I think it breaks it up really nicely to put some little blossoms in there. And it's another way of filling in some of your white space as well. So I'm going to show you how to do that in a second, and we're going to be doing that on the previous page, the one I'm working on at the minute, because I was going to do it anyway. So I figure I might as well kill two birds with one stone and get that done on camera while I'm showing you all. Now there are a few different sizes of Posca pens. This one that I'm using at the moment is the 1.8 to 2.5mm, which is the fatter one. There is a, let's see if I've got one here, yeah. We've got a thinner Posca, which is 0.9 to 1.3mm, and you've also got the very, very fine one, which is 0.7mm. So I'd recommend that you use either this big chunky one or the next size down that I showed you, or you could use a mixture of the two, so you get some really tiny little speckles in there as well. Totally up to you. But even if you don't use Posca, you could just, like I say, use some gouache paint, some acrylic paint, and a dotting tool. You know, even if it's just a cocktail stick or something, you just make do with what you've got, and you'll still get exactly the same result, or near as damn it anyway. So I'm pretty sure that I'm happy with what I've done there. So that is the basic technique. Now I'm going to slide the book along back to the one that I was doing last night, and I'm going to show you how I put little flowers in. So you will have seen at the start I got two Posca pens out. I've got a yellow and a red. I'm not too sure how much use the yellow is going to be against the green. It will still layer onto it, but you might not be able to see it. We'll see in a minute. But the red I'm doing because the shoe that I've coloured is red, or a reddish orange, and I just thought that it would tie the page in if I use red as the flowers on the trees. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put some yellow in, just anywhere, and as you can see I'm layering this right on top of the green, and hopefully that's showing up. Yeah, it is. So the yellow is going to be like the centre of the flower, and then I'm going to do some little dots, keeping with the dots of red all around it. But I'm not doing anything special. That's literally it. Let's do a couple more across the tree. Hopefully this is showing up as well, because I know I've got this blasted overhead light that glares on everything. Now you can do the dotting, or you can make it a little bit more abstract. Let's do a little bit of a swizzle. So I'm just doing a swizzle. These are quite big blossoms actually when you look at the tree, but it doesn't have to be completely accurate to the millimetre. we'll do another one over here. Maybe we could just put in some petals on this one. I'm just doing all different, I'm just experimenting really, seeing what looks best. But as you can see, there's no drawing skill required at all. So that one's a little bit different, a little bit more shaped. Let's bring it out the overhead light so you can see. There you go. Now these pens are really quick to dry as well, so you don't have to worry about, you know, waiting for things to dry or smudging things. You just have to be careful at the start when it's still wet. Let's put some more here. I think I'm going to just keep with the dotting thing because it just looks a bit more abstract, and that's what I want really. Just some little tiny posies just to tie it in with the shoe. And you can do really small ones, you don't have to do them all the same size. So I'll just do a little tiny one up here. And maybe a few more little ones sort of scattered around. Let's do those 3. And let's do a couple over here as well. Let's have one big one there and another one there. You might notice as well that the yellow runs into the red because it's still wet. That's totally fine. Again, it just adds to it really. Let's just have a few more little ones in between, I think, and that should do it. Like I say, I don't really want to overwhelm it. You could do them all over. It could be a whole tree of blossoms. But I think we'll just have a few here and there for now. And again, you could have some of these petals just falling down. Is that on screen? Yeah. Just to again tie it all in. Now, if you're wondering how I'm going to be colouring the tree bark or the trunk, I've not made my mind up yet, but it's very likely that I'll be using Claire Holloway's tree trunk or tree bark tutorial, which I'll link in the description if you haven't seen already. It's really, really effective again and very simple. So I'll probably be using that if I don't change my mind and decide on something else. So I'm just looking back at the little posies that we've done, and if there's any other little details I want to add in, I might just do a few more of these little leaves falling down, little petals, so it ties in. And then I'm going to zoom out so you can see the whole thing, see what you think. So let's zoom it out. Okay, and here's the complete tree that I've shown you today how to do, and there's the one next to it so you can see it's exactly the same. But yeah, I really hope that this has been helpful for you and useful, and it will make large expanses of foliage and leaves a little bit less daunting next time you're colouring a page. So thank you so much for watching. Please give a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you soon on Colour with Claire.